live streaming is on.
Yes, now it's working. Yeah, sorry, please.
All right. Um, so I would just go on. I would not repeat, right? Okay. So, I think what's also important to say that the suppression of these protests was actually something that made it possible, like the war to become a reality, because if the protests were not suppressed or like would be in a more active form, there would be more like a stronger reaction from the society to what is happening. So only because like the people are now like super scared with the perspective of like being tortured and put in jail, this is like it limits a lot the possibilities to act, although like Belarusians are still trying to do that in the form of like sabotage the railways and stuff like that. And also like it's interesting that there is an opinion, I don't know if I like share it, but I think it's good to voice it, that Lukashenko is also aware that there is some kind of hidden or latent protest among the people, among the Belarusian people, and then he's afraid to put soldiers to war because despite the population being in fear, right? So we don't see any active protests, but he probably might be afraid of like putting soldiers to war, because then he would have like, first of all, people who know how to fight, right? If they come back, or if they like train, let's say, but also that these people could use arms against him at some point. So I don't know how much it is like a conspiracy theory, but I think it's interesting. And also I think what was important in this whole like project, I would say, is that this like that with the protests in Kazakhstan that happened in January, right? So we kind of almost forgot about it, but that was for me like a very good like training site for the Russian militaries to like show off and to check the reaction of these like contract for collective security that they're having between Russia, Kazakhstan, Belarus, and Armenia now, right? So they were like checking how much they're going to react if there is somebody is going to war. So I think Russia was actually like expecting Armenia, Kazakhstan, and everybody else to support their invasion into Ukraine. And it's interesting how Kazakhstan is reacting now. But at the same time, as Belarusian, I know how much Belarusians would like follow the Kazahi protests and how it was suppressed like really violently and people being killed and stuff. So that is like also like at the same time like as a training platform, but also it shows to people. So it's first of all showing something to the governments, but also like showing to people that getting demoralized because Belarusians chose like, let's say, peaceful protests, but then they saw what happens to people who choose like an armed protest or like an armed resistance. And I think all these years, like since I remember from 2014, after Maidan and after the invasion into Donetsk and Lugansk regions in Ukraine, Lukashenko's like basically speeches were full of this like condemnation of what happened in Ukraine. So he was always asking, do you want to have something that we have in Ukraine now? So basically this is a very good demonstration that anyone who's like rising up against the regime in the post-Soviet territory is gonna like answer with lives or territories or both, you know? And so this is a very good message. So it's not only about like getting territories, it's also like keeping territories and people in fear of like even being afraid to change something. And I really liked how Vitaly shaped it, that what kind of peace we want. So if you keep people in just wanting peace, like without even giving them, you know, the space to think about what they would like to have. So if you demoralize them to the point that they don't even know what peace is, then it's like there's no way for the future to be shaped in any way. And yeah, I think basically it looks like also politically, and it's sorry, I'm sorry like to mention that, but it looks like all these like bragging with new guns that all the actors are having. So it's just basically like a big fair of or like a play field for the new guns. Like everybody's showing off which guns they're having, how much they're costing, and like what are they inflicting, how good they're at killing, and stuff like that. So this is like, for governments, this is like a way to like look like look in real time what is like what would this decision, how it influences. So they're learning really like on this conflict. But also I think, yeah, like I totally agree that this like coming back to just this dual power, or like the triple power with China, whatever, conflicts, that hey, there is NATO, if we don't support NATO then we support Russia, or vice versa. So this is like this is really weird, which is like depriving Ukrainian people of any subjectivity really. But also like also knowing that like coming into Ukraine would mean, like by NATO, could mean like losing a political independence for like decades, right? Or like changing the political play field, let's say, for many years in different countries. And yeah, as for the nationalism, I don't think that in Belarus nationalism is on the rise, because maybe it's a good thing. I don't know if it's a good thing, but Lukashenko did everything to just exterminate any kind of identity in Belarusians. But so they are basically associating themselves with like a big brother, the Russians. And but generally Putin is like the biggest like imposer of nationalism, because what he's doing is like actually creating or intensifying identity formation, that people don't want to be associated with Russia, with Russians, with, so they want a distance and like to be opposing. And this is how this all is creating like these new, not necessarily new identities, but generally the identities that would shape, like, so it's the other and it's against all of us, right? So, and we have to like feel that there is some, that we are the same in this situation. And yeah, maybe the last thing I would say, that it's interesting, like I would even imagine, because Lukashenko is a very weird guy, so he's usually siding with the one who is strong. And I think in this case, he sided with Putin because he believed he was strong, or the army was strong, whatever. And I think we could even see in history, if like Russia or Putin starts to lose really badly, so he could reject support to Putin if he sees that he's not strong anymore, that he's a weak guy. So he like I don't think it will influence in any way this conflict, but I'm just commenting from my perspective. And yeah, it's important to say that basically, however this conflict ends, or whenever it ends, if it ends with the victory of Ukraine, then it's gonna like totally influence the whole sphere. Like most probably Russia will be like collapsing and disintegrating and stuff like that. If it's not, if Russia is gonna like win, so we're all like having more decades of like this super dark times of just not being able to even fantasize about another future or another type of peace. Yeah.
Thank you, yeah, for your intervention. It's really a pity. Also, Nina had to leave, unfortunately, but it was, of course, a pleasure to have her in the conversation, and it was very, yeah, touching. Also, hearing what she told us, and yeah, it's very kind of. No, it was a very interesting conversation so far, and also would like to add something. I kind of course, I kind of share and understand that it's a very dark time, no, a very difficult time. So it's the view, also my view, it's kind of pessimistic, but at the same time, I would like to try, to be a bit more optimistic. Also, Nina was speaking about the a sort of opposition between the choices that have been made by governments, either very authoritarian governments or more formally democratic ones that kind of make Ukraine and Russia and all the countries around ended up in this war. But at the same time, no, I especially in the left. I would say that Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, other countries such as Poland, for instance, as their societies in the last decades and even before have been able to express a very strong social movements. Sometimes, of course, with confusing elements, but nevertheless, I would say in the most of the cases, very progressive, strong social movements. Of course, the opposition to Lukashenko in Belarus is very strong, it's very tough, and of course, despite all the difficulties, and yes, also the feminist movement in Poland, for instance, it's one of the most important of the last year, and in Ukraine there have been a lots of revolution or revolution attempts, which are kind of controversial. But as I say, from the bottom, from the grassroots society, I would say there is a very popular force also that, and also it's something which is at stake, I would say, with this war. And so that's just something I would like to add. And I would like to just maybe ask the last question about this what although it's very difficult to imagine, but what to do now also from your point of view, but at the international level, from the left, let's say, in the context of the left of the comrades also from the world Europe, which I think should try to get more involved in the process, should try to understand more, and should try also to listen more at people who are now in Ukraine, in Belarus, in Moldova, in Russia, and I think this is not happening enough. I mean, from the left, this is my personal point of view, and given the fact that we are maybe stuck in this dilemma, that of course the better outcome is peace, but at the same time, what kind of peace? How can we try to push for a ceasefire, for a justice context wherein we can find some sort of agreement, some sort of peace, and at the same time with the full support, of course, of people struggling in Ukraine, and I would say to some extent, this is my personal view, armed and non-armed, in Belarus, in Moldova, in the whole Europe, with the bigger question of welcoming of refugees and dissent in Russia. So again, although it's very difficult to answer this question, it just maybe fantasizing, but from your point of view, where to start to try to build a sort of international opposition to what is happening. Please, I don't know, maybe Vitali, if he wants to go first.
Well, it's a very, 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 very tough question. I think on the one hand, we have to do what we were doing already. So, despite the fact that the war has split radically, a part of whatever remained of this post-socialist, post-Soviet kind of space, but there were processes that were going before. So there was this kind of Russophobia that I was mentioning, like the Russophobia in the Moldovan society was strong before the war. And we will do probably, and when I'm saying that we'll have to do what we're doing before, it's like trying to build a new, I don't know we were calling it here, regional internationalization or regional internationalism. So we were doing that before, despite the various ways in which other political forces in our region were trying to split us apart, to pull us apart as far as possible, we were trying to reconnect and to work around topics that were of common interest, to build some solidarity in the place of force, or like to counter forces that were pushing for splits. So we're doing that, and we'll have to do that despite the war, despite everything. We'll have to do that. This new regional internationalism, I don't know, I don't have a better name for it, but it's kind of, this is how we called it. And at the very general level, we'll probably need another form of internationalism, a renewed internationalism that would be a little bit different from the one that we were talking before. For example, like the working class that we're having kind of in mind when building this in new international, or this internationalism before, it's now different. It's, as we said, or as sociologists were saying, it's basically precariat. This new precariat, it's different from the working class that we had before. So we have to reinvent a new form of solidarity given the new situation of the working class. I think I don't have kind of any very big insights about how it should look. At least what we kind of can think that it has to have, it has to include solidarity. It has to be inclusive, so that not to exclude various groups, like putting emphasis, and that's has been the criticism of feminist movements. They were criticizing the Marxism, like the traditional Marxism obsession with the working class as being male-centered, and we have to think about that. Like this new internationalism built around the new working class should take into account all these criticisms and all these new struggles through which feminism was advanced, and feminist struggles have to be included in this new internationalism. Of course, there is also the need of discussion: what kind of feminism do we want to include, and that would be necessarily an intersectional feminism that will take into account class, but also race and other intersections of various features. So that, like, this new internationalism, as I said, should be solidary, should be inclusive, shouldn't be culturally hegemonic. We shouldn't try to force some conceptions or some concepts of what a human being is, to push them as being the universally right and universally true. It should be also open to other forms of knowledge, other kind of, as sociologists say, like other epistemologies. It should, of course, have a strong ecological component. We should really take care of the environment, and we should include the environment in this our new internationalism. It should be pacifist. I think we still have to think about what pacifism means and still means in the era of nuclear weapons. And like I think I was reading the last year, by coincidence, of course, Günther Anders, and there was this huge debate in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s about the nuclear weapons, and it kind of were like influenced by this presentism of our era, focusing only on things that kind of are happening right now, and that fed with by the media about that, also kind of suffering this erasure of a certain past and not being really connected to the struggles of the past. We forgot totally about the nuclear threats, and we have to also invent a new form of pacifism. I don't know how that would work together. It's really difficult. I think also we should organize. Like, networks are great, and I think we kind of discovered that networks are great in terms of sharing knowledge, but we need other forms of organization that would be stronger than networks. I don't know what kind of of organizations that should be, but we need organizations that would be at the same time flexible. So, for example, to attract informal workers, to unite precarious workers or workers that are invisible, for example, not invisible, but like confined in the private space, for example, like the care workers, like migrant care workers in various countries, people from the service industry. So it's at the same time to be flexible, but also in a way rigid, so as to constitute some power. And we probably might need to rethink our engagement with whatever we call politics. We should kind of try to, and that's my personal view, that we should really try to struggle for power, and this power to be used to change the world. And of course, we have to try to build through these instruments a new world, and not accept any compromises, or compromises that in the end kind of means our demands being just perverted and accommodated in a way that kind of harms both the idea of an alternative and both our power to change the world. So I don't know, it might sound chaotic, but it's the way I feel right now. A little bit confused, a little bit chaotic, with some insights, but they're very loosely connected and very kind of thrown away.
Yeah, thank you. No, and I guess it's probably a collective task to make this point staying connected. No, but the first way you called, no, this idea of regional internationalism or something like this, I guess um it's very fascinating way to call it, and I guess it's a good direction to look at maybe to go towards. And so yes, please, from I would like to ask to Anarchist Black Cross from Belarus if want to add something to Vitaly's words about this, about how to act now on the international level. Of course, how what do you expect from the international left also?
Right. I think I just was trying to think of several, like, what problems arose with the beginning of war, right? And what challenges we faced with that. And I agree. I think you, Francesco, said that like left, and I mean anarchists too, are not good at finding solutions, or like find emergency solutions to like very complex problems, right? Or emergencies, because many times we're like into discussions, into like weighing things against each other and stuff like that. And I don't think it's bad, but I think we are lacking some of the reactiveness, let's say. Also, I think I agree that the first thing that should be created is this like solidarity, but also like at the moment it's, I think, mostly connected with like being in solidarity with the Ukrainian people. And I think we should work more on like spreading the solidarity outside or around, or like not necessarily say that it's just Ukrainian people who are like the object of our support or the object of our solidarity. Like sometimes we do something without even asking if they need it, or like if they need things, we offering them, like, or and make it like really reciprocal, and not just subject object a relationship. Also, I think at the same time we should understand completely that just as Nina was mentioning, that at this moment many of our Ukrainian comrades, or generally Ukrainians, are very in a very bad mental condition and in very bad physical condition, very unsafe situation, which like really prevents people from reacting to some theoretical whatever ideas, and I think we should not expect that from them at the moment. We should not be like offended that they're like not participating or not commenting on whatever something, because it really for people in danger, it's really maybe not the time right now. At the same time, I think so we should work really with what we have, right? So if we don't have our Ukrainian comrades who could like clearly say or express what they need or like what they think is necessary, or they could not act anymore in the previous projects they worked like pre-war projects. So it means we have to work with that. I learned from I know Belarusian. I'm not trying to compare Belarusian protests to war, right? I'm not trying to compare the consequences of this protest to consequences of war. But I think I learned to, with the 2020 in Belarus, I learned to perceive things or like the protest or the aim, the goal, not as like not to be goal oriented, but be like understanding that this is a process. And I think at the moment, especially because the war is so fresh, it's just 1 month, right? And it's a lot for people in Ukraine. It's a month already. But for us who are not participating, it's like a month, you know? But then I feel that there's like a lot of people are very much like goal oriented. So like this, we need peace now. So this means like we are forgetting about the process, like what's happening while we are waiting, or like we're fighting for peace while we are like working on this peace, right? I think a lot of people in Belarus also made this mistake, like every day thinking like, okay, we need to get rid of Lukashenko. So there was no space for anything else, right? And there's also like another problem with this is the lack of discussion, because like the space for discussion is really closed. Like people don't want to talk about it, because if you start talking about war, if you start to criticize some things that you see are challenging, or maybe something that you see problematic for the future, like politically, people just want to shut you up because this is not the time. And there is a lack of discussion. I mean, I'm speaking about my region, right? I don't know what happens in like the Western Europe. Probably there's a lot of discussions on that. I don't know. But in general, it feels like you can't comment on anything. Or like we have, for example, a battalion that is a Belarusian, something like Belarusian battalion, who is a little bit like, whose founders are like right wing. And you cannot comment on that just because they're now fighting, you know, Putin. And this is problematic. Like we should find, or like we should create this culture of like being able to talk about these things, or because like I said, the governments are learning, and we should also like take this time and space as a learning experience. Like we should not only just observe it or maybe feel hopeless and powerless all the time, but also like learn and create these connections, right? So not only like solidarity, but also like actual like action connection, right? Because from my experience, like again, like what we are doing is like really small. Like I said, this like network of ABCs is now helping to fundraise and like get protective gear to our comrades in Ukraine, but only because we had it, and because we like we're working on that. Like for 5 years previously, we were like able to do it like next day. And we already had connections like in the city, so it was like working really smoothly. And I think if we as activists, if we as like movements were prepared, right? Because governments are prepared. They have their proxies everywhere. I mean, like they call each other, they figure out, and we can't. We need like to you know, like to find time. We need to find contacts of people. We need to build trust. So I think it's good that we are seeing it as a process. Like we should build trust instead of like thinking about like what happens when Putin or whatever wins. So we're in this moment. Let's work in this moment. This is what I think is important. Also, like I think for the Western left and also like some of the anarchists, there's like living in this dual power, or like being very critical to the NATO, which is okay, a good thing, I support that. But then it creates this kind of like, if Russia is the enemy of NATO, then I'm like friends with Russia or something like that. And I think it's very important for the Russian left, instead of just reproducing what they learned in books about Western colonialism, Western imperialism, just instead of like just taking sides, just to take this time and to actually, and time and effort, and like to finally understand what is really happening in the region, not like what you read in books or what you read in the news, but like take this time to understand, to listen to the people who are there, like don't listen to the people who are, because this is what really the governments are like trying to put us in two boats, right? And one of us is like pro-Russian, another is pro-Western. That's it. There's no me, or there's no in between. And I think this is important to like create this new culture of like understanding complex issues without like just being in our analysis and ready-made analysis and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that would be my idea.
Thank you so much, ABC, and we really want to thank again also Nina Potarska from Ukraine for making space and time to be here with us. For her was clearly a very difficult moment, and we are really we don't have enough words to thank her for coming. The same goes for Ilya Brudaitskis, and Vitalis Princeana and ABC, Anarchist Black Cross. So thank you to you all. It seems to me that both of you pointed out to important questions, such as how do we get out from the binary and the divisions, especially between the kind of Western and the Eastern Bloc. Both of you emphasized the challenge and what is at stake in thinking solidarity beyond the humanitarian solidarity and the humanitarian help towards Ukraine. So what this practical action could look like is a big question for all of us. Following Vitaly, it seems that this action should be based on a new form of internationalism that follows the principle of intersectionality, of an intersectional internationalism, we could say, and looking for a process of ongoing pacifism that starts from the practical action and connection also beyond the networks that we are using and sharing the knowledge. So in this spirit, we hope to continue the conversation with you all soon, both on Dynamo Press through exchanging articles and with a practical action that we would like to discuss with you and continue to discuss in the next future. Thank you very much for coming again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for gathering us. It's an important step.
And and also I share your conclusion. I mean, I guess this is the time where to understand means to act. No, I guess we have to make an effort to join these two different things, and I guess it's our collective task from now on. And thank you again. Thank you.
Yeah, if you also stop the live video, maybe we can say hello in a more intimate way.